The topic of environmental social governance, also known as ESG, is changing the way we invest and how we think about companies in a far more holistic manner than we've ever seen before. We invited ESG expert and founder of ESG Communications, Elliot Frankal, to the AlternativeSoft offices to see how this is impacting a range of industries. So, Elliot, does ESG help with a fund outperforming, perhaps another non-ESG related fund or ESG product? Do you have any examples of that?
Sure. Well, I think there's a lot of academic and industry studies that have been done on this. I don't think there's a definitive answer. As with anything in investment, there was a definitive answer if one would be doing it. I think if we did a literature review of all those studies, the general conclusion would be that it certainly doesn't create underperformance, and that it justifies the relatively small extra costs of buying an ESG research or undertaking some engagement. Those costs are justified by the better performance. I think in terms of generating outperformance, there is some evidence of that, but it depends on how you do your investment and what you actually invested in. A good example that I found, we were with CDP, and CDP is a big environmental NGO that every year produces its A-list of the most environmental companies, about 150, 200 companies each year. And Stocks, which is a fund index provider, have created an A-list index tracking the performance of those A-list companies and compared it against its general world benchmark in the last 7 years. And over 7 years, the A-list index is outperformed by, I think it's 5.5%. So I think that's a pretty good correlation to show that these companies are generating a bit of alpha. It's hard because ultimately, but let me put it this way, I think a lot of investors that we speak to see ESG as a proxy for good management. What is the value of a company? A lot of it is intangible assets, corporate culture, brand value, and human capital. And ESG speaks to those elements, but those are intangible elements, and it helps investors to just get a better sense of how well this company is run and where its value really is.
So I know we touched on this earlier, but when we were talking about ESG, is there a particular focus on the environmental, social, or governance side of that investment product? Is there any sort of set key points that you're looking for?
Yeah, there are nuances. I think there's a tendency to make ESG more complicated than it needs to be. Basically, there's only 4 ways that an investor can be responsible. They can divest and not invest in something because of some environmental or social or governance or moral reason. They can integrate ESG factors, which basically means we promise to consider these factors. We promise to look at an emissions of a company and factor that into our investment process in some way. They can be an active owner, i.e. we're going to use our leverage as an investor to try and change corporate behaviour for the better. Or they can positively invest, i.e. say we are going to put our capital behind a solar farm or a factory that only has very high human capital and labour rights standards. And so those 4 flavours of responsible investment, divestment, integration, active ownership, positive investment, they're the only ways that one can do ESG. And within that, you can decide the weight you want to put on environmental issues or social issues or governance issues, and that's what investors do. And I think that's the most helpful way to think about it.
So where does your company ESG Communications fit in?
So we're a PR company that specialises in responsible investment and sustainability. We get ESG, we get the media, and we like to do things differently. So our clients comprise of the full spectrum of the responsible investment community. We work with asset owners, pension funds like CalPERS, biggest pension fund in the US, Brunel Pension Partnership here in the UK. We work with asset managers, and we work with those bodies that are trying to influence those investors. So CDP, probably the world's biggest environmental non-profit. We work with FAIR, which is a $20 trillion network of investors trying to create a more sustainable food system. And we work with companies on their corporate responsibility reporting. So helping them understand how to speak with the ESG community and understand what it is the ESG research providers are scoring them on and asking them about. And what do we do? Well, we do two things really. We do media relations, so working with organisations on their strategic communications, helping them put press releases together, getting their messages out to the target publications they want to be in. Someone like FAIR, for example, who I mentioned, we've had over 2,000 media hits with them in the last 4 years, places like the Financial Times, BBC, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. And the second thing we do is we create great content. You know, we're a team of writers, and we will always put together copy, whether that be a glossy report, an article, website, a tweet, that gets the message across that the client wants to get across. And we produce kind of award-winning reports like Kempen Asset Management. And so, yeah, we help our clients say the right things to the right people at the right time. So that's what we do.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Elliot. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you very much for your time.